Ooby-doo, this is everyone's favorite boomer and vintage lens enthusiast, and today we're going to do a test. If this had been an actual, forget about that. If this was an actual emergency, you'd have to kiss your ass goodbye. But since it's not, what we're going to do is we're going to do a test. This is a Digital Rebel XT, which is an old 8 megapixel camera from the 2008 or 2007 or something like that. Believe it or not, they make an adapter. This is a Vello brand. They make an adapter that takes an M42 screw mount and it mounts onto an EOS camera body. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? I was on a famous superstore, camera superstore in the city, and I happened to see this, and I bought 3 of them because they're cheap. See, it comes off like that, right? It has the EOS bayonet mount, and it's got the thread, the M42 thread in it, and it holds infinity focus. So I said, wow, I got all these old EOS bodies. The XT was even with the $100 off from Canon, instant cash rebate is still like $600 or $700 camera when it first came out, and now nobody wants them. They're sort of worthless. So what you do is you got to keep buying a new camera, selling it while it still has some resale value, and then buying the next thing. But I held on to it too long, and I'm stuck with it. I also got the XTI, which is 10 megapixels. I got the T1i, I got the 31i, the SL2, and the T3i. So that's all my Canon stuff, and I got a lot of lenses for it. But I got all these M42 lenses kicking around, and believe it or not, this is the Super-Takumar 1 to 1.4 50 millimeter Asaya optical company lens made in Japan. It focuses down to less than 1.5 feet or 4 or 5 meters. It has click stops, half click stops down to f16. How about that's pretty cool. Now I also have 2 photodiox adapters, and they're silver, and we put them on, and I have a Sears 28 millimeter, and I have another Pentax, a couple of Pentax 50 and 55s, and when you put them on, this index mark is straight up, just like it was on a Pentax camera. But you see, a lot of these DSLRs, they have this thing here for the flash, and it sort of blocks the view. So the fact that they have it a little to the side, maybe it's helpful, I don't know. But I went to the park today, and I did some tests, and it seems to work really well. Of course, these DSLR cameras, and Canon in particular, they don't have a focusing screen. They just sort of have a screen. They got some reticles in there, and some LEDs light up the little reticles so you know where your AF point is. But other than that, it's damn hard to set the focus. And this bad boy, this XT, has a very dark viewfinder. The screen is pretty dim too. Let's look at a picture. Well, I picked a picture with a lot of white in it. See, that's a perfectly exposed photo, but it looks dark on the screen, and I have the brightness all the way up. So, but what's this lens's claim to fame? This is a radioactive lens. The rear element is radioactive. Now, I juiced this up with ultraviolet light for 3 days. I brought an ultraviolet fluorescent tube, and it cleared up really good. I may have to give it another hit. It looks like it's starting to yellow again. I don't know if you can see that, but that's neither here nor there. It was really, really yellow, and I cleared it up, and so every once in a while I just give it a shot of UV light. If you have a cat, make sure you have it in a room where the cat can't get in, because UV light seems to annoy them. So keep that in mind. So when I'm doing this test, since I don't care what happens to this camera, I mean, I took over 5,000, or was it 50,000? I took a lot of pictures with this camera, and it's radioactive. Well, you don't believe me? I got a Geiger counter. Oh, gotta hold the button down longer. Oh, there it goes. Huh? Ah, there we go. Gotta wait for it to beep. Now, the rear element is shooting this way, and that means the radiation is coming out that way. Let's see what happens. How many clicks? 19 clicks per minute, 22 clicks per minute, 33 clicks per minute, 42. That's still acceptable. 45, 48, 51, 62. Let's see if we could get a warning signal out of it. 85. Oh, there goes the warning signal as soon as it hits 100. So even though the element is here and there's this much space and the guts of the camera in between, it's still pretty damn dangerous. Is it slowing down or still going up? 258. Can we get 300? Looks like we're going to hit 300 counts per minute. Yeah. All right. I got to let that chill for a while. The tube gets saturated and it needs a refractory period. So let's take this off. Put this camera over here. Does that look yellow to you? Maybe. It's hard to tell. But it was really, really yellow. You look through here, you can see it was just yellow. So, has this gone down some? Not really. But let's just see what it does. Oh my God, man. As soon as I put it there, look at that. Oh my God. Oh, 800, 962, 1000. All right, you get the message. I got to shut this off. So what's the serial number on this? 2267431. You can look up in a database online and see what series are radioactive. So this is radioactive. Now, I want to find out how long it's going to take to cook that sensor, right? I want to see how long it takes. I'm going to leave this on day after day, weeks, months. I'm going to take pictures and see what happens. So I went to the park today, and it was overcast in the morning, from heavy overcast to cloudy bright. I was shooting at ISO 800, ISO 400, mostly f8, some f11s, and then the flash pictures I use f16. And oh, it's nice looking otherwise. Real good, nice shape. I mean, look at how clean these engraved numerals are. Even here in the lens barrel, they're really clean. I mean, if you try and clean them, you take the material out, and that's why you know someone tried to clean it. Otherwise, it's nice, no backlash on the focusing. It looks really great. Except I noticed all these old Takumars, the set screws get rusty. These never been serviced as far as I know, but they tend to get corroded a little bit, which is neither here nor there. So I have to put the thing in M mode, and then it doesn't automatically pick for me. I got to halfway hold the shutter button and then go like this, and then make the indicator, the LED indicator in the middle. Then I know I got the correct focus. And I bracket it a little bit, like one stop under or over, because the screen is dark. I couldn't tell if I was properly focused or not. But it turns out when you set, I focus wide open, and it's really hard to focus, like I said, with this screen. But you could see with the f1.4, you could get pretty close, and they nailed it in a couple of shots. And others, I was close, and when I stopped down to f8 or 11, then I got the depth of field covered me. So it's doable, it's usable. So I have some other M42 screw mount lenses. I have two other adapters, and as far as I know, the other two aren't radioactive. Although I did order 2 more radioactive lenses, well, because they were in excellent and like new minus condition. And I'm going to do some more experimenting with M42 on EOS bodies, and we're going to check that out. So let's look at some photos and see what it's all about. But like I said, I'm doing a test with this camera, and this is a real radioactive lens. I want to see if it influences a chip or anything, if it degrades at all. So I'll probably do an update on this in about a month, brief update, and then probably 1 or 2 more until the thing craps out or it doesn't. So let's check out some photos, shall we? This is a big park with lots of nooks and crannies. And I wanted to take this trail, but it was warm and wet that day on the 20th of April, and there was a lot of bugs out, like ticks and stuff. So I just bailed, and I went on a wider trail with a lot less brush and bush. And well, I took some unusual pictures of my usual jaunt. I was having trouble focusing, getting a proper focus even at f1.4 with the shallow depth of field because of the type of viewfinder they have on the XT. As it is a focusing screen, it's more of an aerial screen. But I was able to get like 90% success rate. Of course, I had to futz around and go back and forth 3 or 4 times before I figured I got a good focus. It was like in the olden days, before they had autofocus. And then I had to manually shed the aperture, although I used it mostly at f8. And then I had to dial in the shutter speed. Of course, the camera, even in manual mode, it has a slider, whereas it tells you, you know, whether you're plus or minus. And then after some empirical experimentation, it seems like I had to set the exposure bias to -1 f-stop. That's where I get my best results. So I got to keep that in mind whenever I go shooting. And of course, it was a cloudy day and everything. The contrast wasn't low, but it was even. And in the camera, I had the sharpness up, I had the contrast all the way up, and I had the saturation at nominal. I still had to do some post-processing. Usually I hit the auto adjust button, and it did a really good job. A couple of times I had to futz with it. So mostly in the levels or the lighting, they call it, I either had to adjust the shadows or the highlights or both. And then no sharpening, absolutely no sharpening at all. This is strictly as it came out of the camera. I think the results are pretty good, being it's only an 8 megapixel chip. And even when I went to 1:1 crop, well, you know, 1:1 1920 by 1080, that's a pretty big chunk of an 8 megapixel chip. So, you know, wasn't really intense pixel peeping. And then, of course, now all these flowering trees are gone. The rest of the trees are blooming green. It's a totally different situation. Doesn't this look like the surface of Mars from the Mars orbiting reconnaissance satellite? Yeah, that's the surface of Mars, absolutely. That's the surface of Mars. Here's a guy in his boat, and there's a ducky in front of him. He had to be a couple 100 feet away. So even 8 megapixel, you know, it'll get you some resolution, without a doubt. Of course, some of my adjustments may look a little HDR, but I didn't try to go overboard with it. This is Goat Island, I believe it's called. See the duckies there? There they are, 2 duckies. And some flowering trees. It's a fine lens, and I'm going to put it on a higher megapixel camera, but because it's radioactive, I'm trying to cook this chip. I also have the Mamiya Seeker f1.4 50 millimeter, and I'm going to swap that out and put this on this camera and do another photo shoot with that, maybe at a city next time, and see if there's any, you know, difference or improvement or degradation. And of course, forsythias, they only bloom for 2 weeks. They're gone already. They're like solid green now. The day I was there, they were having a race. They're a 50 kilometer, 5 kilometer, like a 20 kilometer. And this is where the starting point was, where you're registered. I know the woods, you know, this is right before the canopy closes up, so they were still see-through woods. And I just want to take some pictures. The woods is the woods. I mean, it's a pleasant park with a lot of nooks and crannies. I mean, it isn't like in your face, like, oh my God, this is stunningly beautiful, but it was subtle. The place is subtle. And this lens performed really well. Of course, at f8, any lens should. At 50 millimeters, I have newfound respect for them, because it involves you either have to move closer or further away, but it's still a telephoto lens where you could crop it and get, you know, zoom up on something. So even though I used to hate 50 millimeters, now I could appreciate them. Some of the 50 millimeters I had, I got damaged, And I just kept them around because who can you give a damaged 50mm to? But I'm glad I kept them because it turns out that just because a middle part of it is dented, that doesn't mean that the optics are bad. Of course, it's still a crapshoot. You can get a lens that was dropped and it may disrupt the optical alignment, and then, well, you're just screwed. And of course, I got these reeds all over. They got these split rail fences. Of course, where there's reeds, that means there's swampy area. And as the weather gets warm, well, you get a lot of bugs. Some weeping willow trees. They're always the first to bloom. Of course, the reeds should be shooting up and replacing all these old brown guys. New growth and all that. But it's all rustic looking. That's it. It looks rustic, countrified, you know. And I like to capture that. And the tonal rain is outstanding because of the overcast conditions. So that's what I do. I take an hour walk and I stop every 10 minutes and I take a couple pictures and I move on. And that's the thing. If you go there December at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you go there at April at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's like totally different. Absolutely totally different. Of course, I always like to get there early before the crowd set in. And then I like to get there late as the crowds are leaving. And of course, like when the weather is inclement or cold, then no one really goes to the park. They like to go there, you know, in their salubrious conditions. And then when the park is crowded, sometimes they put up a sign saying, park full, no more entrance. And I just don't go to the park in those conditions. Of course, now that it's the warmer weather, it's the end of April now and the beginning of May, let's have to do like street scenes in cities and towns and start doing car shows and stuff. This is a nice lens. I really like it. That's the thing. If you're going to buy a 50mm for a couple bucks more, I get an excellent copy of a 1.4 rather than a 1.8 or f2, because you never know when you're going to need that 1.4. And it does make it easier to focus, also wide open. This is some guy's flowering tree and his row of forsythias in front of his house. So I was very pleased with the way it turned out. It didn't turn out excellent or great, but it was usable for snapshots, absolutely. These are at the closest focusing, 0.45 meters with a flash. I recommend you should consider an old camera and an old lens, just for giggles and laughs.